Thank you for watching another one of my videos. I really appreciate it. Obviously today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the 5 main card fights taking place at UFC 315. We're going to be taking a look at some footage of most of the fighters on this card to kind of see how they match up stylistically. And we're obviously going to be covering these fights in a lot of depth from a betting perspective. But you've probably noticed two things are a little bit different about this video. The first is that this upload is coming a lot earlier in the week than usual. This is because in recent weeks I've made a really big effort to get a week ahead of schedule on fight research. So I've finished researching this card last week and I'm already researching next week's card between Morales and Burns. And the reason why I'm doing this is to try and profit from the extra value that's going to be present in the odds 7 to 10 days before an event takes place. So if you're a member of my community, you know I'm putting out bets pretty early these days and also posting breakdown videos to the website very early these days. And like I say, the main reason why I'm doing this is because I've been using ChatGPT to do some research into beating the closing line in different sports, because I find that I beat the closing line with pretty much every pre-fight bet that I place. And what beating the closing line means is the odds by the time the fight takes place are worse than what you place the bet at. So with pretty much every bet, win or lose, I beat the closing line. A big majority of the time I beat the closing line. So I've been doing some research around this on ChatGPT, and if you can consistently do this, irrespective of what your actual results are in the short term, it's a sign that long term you'll be very profitable. And the more often you beat the closing line and the bigger the margin you beat the closing line by will determine how big of an edge you've got in betting, generally speaking. So this is something I've been working on, and obviously it's a lot of incentive to research fights earlier because you can get more value in the odds. Now there is a bit of a sweet spot. You can't obviously lock in bets too early when the max bet limits are way too low, so you can't be researching fights 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. The liquidity just doesn't exist for you to get a good enough money down for it to make it worthwhile. But you know, 7 to 10 days out before an event takes place could be the sweet spot for me. So I've been focusing on that a lot recently, which is why these breakdowns are coming out earlier, and they should continue to come out earlier, and why you're also seeing the vlogs come out now as well, just because I'm on it. I'm working really hard and I'm trying to just try and fucking take over, man. And a lot of money, do you know what I mean? That's what we're all trying to do, right? We're all trying to create a better life for ourselves, and hard work's the best way we can do that. So I'm working hard right now. So that's the first reason why this video is a little bit different. Second reason why the video is a little bit different is with me researching this card earlier and putting this video out to you guys earlier, there's still a lot of time between now and when this event takes place. So I haven't fully made my mind up on my bets for this card yet. I'm still deciding. I have completed all the research as ever for the fights that I'm going to be talking to you guys about, but I haven't decided what bets I'm placing yet. There are some fighters that I'll be talking about in this video I am extremely tempted to bet, and I have actually placed some bets on them, and I'll tell you who the fighters are that I've bet as I progress through this video. But I've placed bets on fighters that I think the odds will move on, so that gives me an opportunity to hedge out, probably for profit, if come Friday or even fight day Saturday I no longer want to place those bets. With that being said, if you are someone that's researched these fights, I would love to discuss these fights with you on my Discord. So if we get to a fight like the Della Maddalena Belal Muhammad fight where I'm not too sure what to do, once you've kind of seen the research that I present to you, I'd love to have a conversation with you on Discord about how you see the fight, whether you think I should place a bet on that fight. And you can just come to my website, link in the description below, and find a link for our Discord here, and it'll talk you through the 3 steps you can complete to join the Discord. That would be great. And if you appreciate these videos, if you like them coming out earlier, if you like the vlogs, please hit the like button. The more likes I get on the video, the more YouTube pushes it out to people. And I'm hitting a bit of a wall at the moment where I can't kind of break through and get more views because it's getting like similar amount of engagement for every video. So I'd love to take that extra step, that extra push, take things to the next level. So I appreciate you guys. And now let's kick things off, start talking about some fights. And we'll talk about the most important fight of all on this card. It's going to be for the welterweight title, Belal Muhammad versus Della Maddalena. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Belal Muhammad is a pretty big favourite at average odds of about 1.44, which is going to be minus 227 for an implied probability of 69%. If we take a look at the odds on Della Maddalena, he's around an average of 2.75, which is going to be plus 175 for an implied probability of 36%. So a few weeks ago, when I started to look at some of the fights we've got coming up, there were certain fighters that jumped out at me as being like very close to free money based on past performances. The first fighter was Corey Sandhagen, and we all saw how easy work he made of Davison Figueiredo last weekend. The second fighter was Gillian Robertson. She also made very easy work of Marina Rodriguez. The third fighter was Belal Muhammad. And before researching this fight, I thought this would be a very, very easy fight for Belal Muhammad because he's obviously a very strong wrestler. And from memory, Della Maddalena has had a lot of problems on the ground against both Gilbert Burns and Basil Hafez. I will say this. At present, I have bet Belal Muhammad this weekend. Do have a bet on Belal Muhammad. But I am having second thoughts because after researching this one, I didn't like Belal as much as I thought I would. And once I play you a little footage in just a little while of both Belal and Jack, perhaps you will see why I'm having second thoughts here. It's no problem if you have second thoughts. You can just cash out, hedge out at a very small loss. But yeah, I'm having second thoughts about this bet. I don't know if I'm having second thoughts because I performed badly in April, so I'm kind of putting a little more, what's the word? If I'm feeling a little bit more cautious, just a little bit more sensitive, I guess. But at the same time, you guys know me by now. You know what I always say. Whenever we're dealing with fighters in this odds range, if you're going to bet them and they carry an implied probability of 69%, they should have no major weaknesses, pretty much no way to lose. And there is something that Jack Maddalena does that puts a little bit of doubt in my mind. I've lost a lot of bets recently due to one of three reasons. Either the fighter I bet on has significantly underperformed, which is the case of like Michel Pereira against Abus Magomedov. 2, the fighter that I bet against has looked significantly better than usual. So an example of this would be Paddy Pimblett against Michael Chandler. And then the third reason is a combination of the two, which I guess you can say Chandler looked much worse than usual. Paddy looked a lot better than usual, right? But yeah, it's one of these three reasons, and that's the most difficult aspect of pre-fight betting, because when you study, past fights to try and predict, how a future fight is likely to go, there's no way for us to kind of learn what kind of improvements one fighter will have made, or what level of decline a fighter has been through. Very difficult. I mean, we know that younger fighters are more likely to make big improvements, older fighters more likely to decline, but that doesn't go the whole way towards helping us avoid putting our money at risk in situations where one or both fighters just show up and look nothing like they have in the past. And if you're in my live betting group, you'll know, unfortunately, in MMA it's very common that fighters show up and perform nothing like they have in the past. I think it feels worse in the UFC, because say for example you bet a sport like football. Football teams will play 30-40 times a year, right? And throughout the season, they're going to have a handful of times where they just don't show up. They just underperform. They don't perform like they usually do. Or maybe they run into the opposition that perform way better than usual, right? That everything aligns for them on the night they have the game of the year. But because they play so many times, 30 to 40 times in a year, it's not really a deal breaker if you have like the odd bad night here and there. You underperform here and there. You run into an amazing version of your opposition here and there. You know, that will get diluted by the sheer volume of games where things play out as they should do and you get that normality. With fighting, it's much more difficult because if you're only fighting 2 or 3 times a year max and you significantly underperform on the night, or your opponent is just an incredible version of themselves on that one night where the stars all align for them, then you know that has a pretty big impact on your short-term career. So yeah, a lot to think about at the moment with this fight, because even though based on past performances this should be an easy fight for Belal Muhammad, Della Maddalena is showing me enough that makes me think this dude could actually look a lot better than he has in the past on Saturday night. And like I say, I've lost a lot of bets recently to either the fighters I bet showing up looking much worse than usual, their opponents looking much better, or a combination of the two. And the bets that I've lost have been difficult to see that come in. For example, Abus Magomedov is terrible. You know, very, very bad. So it's tough to credit him with showing up looking better than usual. He's been consistently poor in the UFC. But there are signs with Maddalena that he could actually look a lot better than he has recently. And when we're playing some footage of him, I'll go into the reasons why I'm feeling like that. Maybe I'm just a bit overly cautious, but maybe you guys can help me out with that on Discord, you know, or in the comments below. Let me know what you think. So, in terms of the tail of the tape, this is kind of where the problems start for me. So, Belal Muhammad is 36 years old, but he's going to be 37 in July, which is only a couple months away now. And he's had 27 pro fights, which is a lot of fights. He's also only 5'11 with a 72-inch reach. If we look at Della Maddalena's record, he's 28. So, he's 9 years younger than Belal. And we know statistically the younger fighter wins around 70% of the time when there's a 9-year age gap in a fight. He's about the same size, but I do worry about Belal potentially having a lack of physicality. And this is where things get quite deep for me and ambiguous. So if you like a bit of depth and ambiguity, you've come to the right place. So we can't use MMA math, right? In what order? This is such a complex fight. I don't even know in what order I should talk to you guys about this fight in. Okay, let's get striking out the way. We can all agree. In fact, let's give a summary of this fight for anyone that's not familiar with these two fighters. Most of you will be. It's a classic striker versus grappler matchup, and we can all agree, every single person watching this can agree, that if the fight goes to the ground, Muhammad's going to have a huge advantage. Jack's looked extremely bad on the ground. But if the fight stays standing, we know Jack is going to have a huge advantage, and we can all agree on that. So where this fight gets complicated is, I don't even know in what order to fucking talk you through this. It's very complicated. Okay, so Della Maddalena has terrible takedown defense and a very low level ground game. Belal Muhammad is a good offensive wrestler with good grappling control, but he does lack physicality in everything that he does. So, doesn't really have any power in his hands, and in grappling positions he's not the strongest. From a technical point of view, his grappling's great, but he doesn't have that kind of crushing physicality. But when he fought Leon Edwards, he looked a lot more physically imposing than usual. Like, if you look at him in grappling positions against all these guys, doesn't really look that strong. And then all of a sudden in the Leon Edwards fights, he looked a lot stronger than usual. In my live betting group, we were saying, you know, is Belal Muhammad on the secret juice? Like, is he, you know, doing more strength and conditioning? Like, what's changed? He just looks way stronger than usual, right? But then Leon Edwards fought Sean Brady. And Sean Brady handled him even easier than Belal did. And Sean Brady's quite a small welterweight. So Sean Brady's not a particularly physically imposing grappler either. And this is where I'm starting to question this fight and think deeply about it, because Sean Brady's not a physically imposing grappler because he's too small, but he looked physically imposing against Leon Edwards. I put it down to the fact that Leon Edwards was battling a staph infection for that fight, and that's why Sean just completely big brothered him on the ground, and Leon couldn't do anything about it. But what if Leon is just totally shit? What if Leon is totally shit and it didn't really have much to do with the staph infection? In that instance, you could perhaps account for Usman not having success in grappling positions against Leon because Usman was on a decline and he's got 2 shot knees. And then perhaps Belal isn't as physically imposing as we thought he was against Leon, because we know that Sean Brady is small. Sean's only 5'10", 5'11", right? 5'10". He's a very small welterweight. So when I look at Belal Muhammad against Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad is looking super strong in grappling positions, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, Belal Muhammad has leveled up. He's way more physically imposing than usual because he's doing a better job of controlling Leon than Usman did. But then Brady goes and does it even fucking more dominantly. And we know Brady's not physically imposing, and we know that Belal never used to be physically imposing before this fight. So is Belal even physically imposing in the first place? I don't know anymore. And that bothers me because Jack Della Maddalena is. Jack Della Maddalena is. And if Jack Della Maddalena is a lot more physically imposing, is a lot stronger than Belal, this fight does get a lot more complicated than I initially thought. So what I'm going to do is show you how bad Jack Della Maddalena's takedown offense and ground game is. Then I'm going to explain to you the concerns I have around betting against him. And then I'm going to show you a bit of footage of Belal's offensive wrestling, so you can perhaps then start to see my concerns. So you can see what I've been watching. I've actually researched this fight twice because I'm really not sure about it. So let's get into it. So this is Jack's last fight against Gilbert Burns. So basically, alright, we're actually going to do it the other way around. We're going to show you the Basel Hafez fight first. So this was a terrible performance from Jack Della Maddalena. Hafez came in on just a few days' notice, and Maddalena barely scraped past him. In fact, some people, you can make a case for Hafez winning this. So a very important detail to pay attention to in this fight is that Hafez doesn't actually take Maddalena down very often. If you pay attention to what's happening, the fight keeps going to the ground because instead of Maddalena trying to defend the takedowns, he attacks with a guillotine instead of defending the takedown. And because of that, obviously he ends up on his back a lot, like Bo Nickel on the weekend against Reina de Ridder. It's a terrible idea, pulling guard in MMA. Very, very rarely works out well for you. So after this fight, you can see here, right? Watch, he goes for the guillotine. No, he didn't that time, actually. He actually got legitimately taken down. But anyway, gets taken down pretty easily there, right? So if we skip through, he then uses the cage to gradually stand back up. Hafez gets in on the legs, takes him down again. But what I want you to pay attention to in this sequence is how strong Jack has to be to keep standing up like this. So you can see when Hafez is in on his legs, when Jack makes a conscious effort to stand back up, he does just stand back up. Watch, like he'll just stand back up now, watch. Right, see how he just stands up like that? That's not an easy thing to do when someone's got control of your body. And he hits the judo throw there. Loses the scramble. But again, then just stands back up. It's not an easy thing to do. But if we keep going through, you can see then he gets the underhook on the left side. And they disengage, right? We'll keep going through. Okay, single leg here. And again, doesn't really try to defend that takedown. Instead, he pulls guard off a guillotine. Right? From there, so he's taken down... call it 3 minutes into the round. Or 3 minutes left to go in the round. So if we skim through, he's been on his back for about a minute. And then again, watch. Just like against the cage, Jack just stands back up. He does it in the middle of the octagon. Now, it's way easier to just stand back up when you're up against the cage, because you can use the cage as a base to wall walk. Here is far more difficult. But watch. He just gets to his knees, and he just stands back up. And this is a sign of a fighter that's just very strong. And what's interesting about Jack is he can keep doing this without getting tired, which does make him a bit of a genetic freak. Because this is exhausting. Yeah, it doesn't really seem to take very much out of Jack at all. And when we go and watch the Belal fight, you'll start to see why this could be a problem for Belal. So then Hafez in on another double leg. And this is where the problems begin, man, for capping this fight and trying to predict this fight. So, Jack Della Maddalena gets taken down a bunch in this Hafez fight. And also the Gilbert Burns fight, which I'm going to show you shortly. But he also shows flashes of really good takedown defense. He shows flashes of knowing what to do. So in this fight, for example, there are some situations where, you know, Hafez will jump in on his legs on a takedown attempt and he'll try and defend it with a guillotine, which then results in him giving up the takedown. But then there are other situations like here where he does a good job of keeping his legs underneath him and digging a deep underhook on the left side. So here he's doing all the correct stuff, right? He's creating a nice wide base against the cage. He's got that underhook on the left side. Here. And he's actively trying to defend the takedown. He's using the correct technique for the most part. I mean, he did take the underhook out, which he shouldn't have, only to put it back in. And because he's used the correct technique there, Hafez has got to give up on the takedown attempt because he knows he's not going to get in on the legs. But then out in the middle of the octagon, he pulls guard. So here, if Jack would have done here what he did a minute ago and cleared his legs, got an underhook on the left side, it's very unlikely Hafez would have got this takedown. But what does he do? He just pulls Hafez on top of him with a guillotine. So this fight is a real tricky one because Hafez, like, to the naked eye, Jack's takedown offense looks really bad, and objectively it is really bad. But I see opportunities for Jack to improve a lot because the technique is already there, the balance is already there. Like, you see it here, right? Nice takedown entry from Hafez, and this time instead of pulling guard, it's a little bit difficult because his Aspinall Taibura graphic is up. You can't really see his feet too good. But look, he's trying to sprawl out of it. He's making it difficult for Hafez to get in on the legs. He understands the importance of scrambling over to the cage where he can use the cage as base to defend the takedown. So this is all good. So the point I'm trying to make is Jack's only really getting taken down when Hafez commits super hard to a double leg takedown, like very early in that first round. Or when he's basically pulling guard. Like, look here. Right, Hafez shoots this double leg. Jack, straight away, he's got this overhook and he's clearing his legs. And Hafez can't get it. And if we keep skipping, skippity, skip, skip. Here's another one. Again, look, takedown attempt. You can see Jack's fighting for this underhook on the left side. And he clears his legs and gets all the way over to the cage. And he uses that underhook on the left side and the overhook on the right side. Look at this deep underhook here on the left side to stuff this takedown. And again, Hafez has to let it go. So in this fight, Jack shows us that he's actually got pretty good takedown defense. Problem with Jack is, again, look here. Look at this entry. Look at this entry coming here. Right, that entry again. Look at the underhook on the left side. Clears his legs, deals with it. Again, look. Watch. Clears the legs, gets underhooks in play. But then he gets taken down. Look what he does differently. So here he's virtually out of trouble. He's sprawling out of the takedown here. But Fez has only just got a very weak grip. Not even got his hands connected together on this single leg. And look, Jack just basically rolls for a choke and pulls him on top. Like, why? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? With 2 minutes left to go in round 2. And then Jack looks very, very weak off his back. Right? Into round 3. Here's another one. Double leg attempt. Jack does a great job of using his balance to skip over to the cage. Creates that nice wide base against the cage. You can see the underhook on the right side here. Good takedown defense from Jack. We'll skippity skip a little bit. And because he's using those underhooks, Hafez has to give up on the takedown attempt. Again here. Look at this. Takedown attempt from Hafez. Clears his legs. Underhook on the left side. So it's like Jack knows what to do. Right? Double underhooks now. And Hafez has to give it up. So it's like Jack knows what to do. Let's just skip through because it's the same shit, man. It's just decent takedown defense from Jack all the way, really. Look at that. Clears the legs. Underhook on the left side. Picture perfect stuff. So we'll keep going. And then from here, Jack goes for a back take. One hook in on the right side. 2 hooks in. Very high up on the torso of Hafez. Very high up on the torso. And because of that, Hafez pivots into top position. And it's all messy on the ground. But what is notable to me is that Jack Della Maddalena is not even breathing heavy at this point in the fight. Fresh as a daisy. And again here, instead of digging, and like he could just dig underhooks here and easily stop the takedown, but he fucks about fighting for a Kimura. And it all gets a bit messy, and he winds up on top. But likely would not have as much success pulling or attacking with a Kimura there against Belal. I think Hafez was just very tired. If he would have tried that earlier in the fight, it wouldn't have worked. So to summarize where we are, and the reasons why I'm having problems with betting this fight, is, okay, let's recap where we are with the breakdown. I'm really sorry, this is probably the messiest breakdown video I've recorded in a long time. But it's a complex fight, so I'm just kind of sharing my thoughts, trying to think out loud, and hopefully you do appreciate the complexity of a matchup like this, why it's very difficult to break this one down. So in my head, obviously we know Belal Muhammad needs to wrestle in this fight to win, because if it stays standing, he's going to get smoked. So I've lost loads of bets recently on either the fighter I bet looking a lot worse than usual, or the fighter that I bet against looking a lot better than usual, or a combination of the two. So I'm looking at this fight here, and I'm thinking to myself, against Basil Hafez, Jack actually demonstrated excellent takedown defense. The only times he got taken down is when he basically attacked with submissions, like guillotines and stuff, basically pulled Hafez on top of him. And at times he looked weak on his back, but then when he made a conscious effort to stand back up, he kind of did easily. Right? Jack's 28. He's strong. He's got good balance. He's physically imposing. Difficult to hold down when he's making a conscious effort to stand back up. And he knows how to defend takedowns. But it seems like he has lapses in concentration all too often where he just gives up cheap takedowns out of nowhere. But what you notice in between Jack's fight against Hafez and Burns is a lot of improvement. And there's just under a year between these two fights. Obviously, the Holland fight isn't that relevant in the context of this matchup because it doesn't feature any grappling. So the Holland fight doesn't tell us a whole lot about where Jack's grappling is at in between these two matchups. But there is about a year, just under a year between these two fights. And then there's just over a year between the fight between Burns and Belal. Just over a year, right? So I'm thinking to myself, and I'll show you the Burns fight in a minute. I'm just thinking to myself, he did improve a lot between the Hafez and Burns fight. Not enough to stop Burns' grappling. Yes, he won the fight, but grappling was an issue for Jack. But at his age, the rate at which he's improving, his physicality, his balance, his strength, his toughness, his technique. If he improves at a similar rate that he did between these two fights, this could actually be pretty tough for Belal. So again, we're just going to focus on the grappling here. But you'll see that you'll see Jack has made improvement. So anyway, here, nice inside trip from Burns. Very early in the fight. But again, Jack not the easiest to control. Right? Doesn't allow Burns to jump on him and establish top position. And as Burns goes to take the back, look at the left hand of Jack, preventing Burns from getting this left hook in. Really nice. He turns into Burns. Stands back up. Gets dragged back down. Trying to turn into Burns. Gets to his knees. Like you can see, he's not easy to control. He's not easy to control. And then he does the correct thing of obviously walking over to the cage to use the cage as a base to defend the takedown. Then he's got his underhook on the left side. And he turns into Burns. And the opportunity for Burns is gone then. And we know how good Jack is at defending takedowns from this position. Underhook there on the right side. Solid takedown defense from Jack, right? We keep skipping through. Right at the end of the round, Burns shoots a nice double leg. Drives through, but again, instead of trying to clear his legs and dig for underhooks, you could see Jack kind of attacks a guillotine. See, with his right arm. And because of that, he gets taken down. Now, there's not really enough time left in the round for Jack to bother working his way back up to his feet. So that position there doesn't tell us a whole lot. But as you can see, generally, across the balance of the first round, takedown offense not terrible from Jack, to be fair. And here, early in round 2, shoots a single, goes to the inside trip, doesn't quite get it. Jack gets to his knees. And again, Jack uses his strength to prevent Gilbert. Look how strong he is to just roll Gilbert over like that. He's so strong. And what's crazy about Jack is he doesn't tire. He doesn't tire. And he stands back up. And again, the opportunity's gone. You know? Jack's takedown offense looks alright, right? Right, minute and 10 left to go in round 2. Nice double leg entry. Turns the corner, gets it this time. But you can see again, Jack immediately gets to his knees. Burns snaps him back down. Eventually Burns flattens him out here. But you can see how scrambly Jack is on the bottom. He's so hard to control. And eventually Burns gets his back. But he's a difficult guy to control, man. Not easy. Not easy. Then if we get to this third round. Double leg entry. Got that underhook on the left side. Look at that takedown defense, man. He does such a good job. Such a good job, man. Like, this is such a deep entry. Look at the balance. Gets that underhook in early. And just the balance is beautiful to watch, man. Absolutely beautiful. Look at that. Deep entry. Gets that underhook on the left side. Feeds Gilbert the single leg. Very good takedown defense. Very, very good. And then he's strong enough to hit a switch. Just skipping through so you can kind of see these positions. Like Gilbert's on his back here, but again, look how strong he is to kick off the cage and hit that reversal. So yeah, I'm kind of looking at this like, to the naked eye, Jack's takedown offense looks really bad. But when you look a little bit deeper into it, he's got a very, very strong foundation to be working from. And with him only being 28 years old, he should be making big improvements from fight to fight. You know, Belal, remember the name, 37 years old now. Does he have the physicality to match a young, hungry bull like Jack Della Maddalena? You know, the odds on Jack, 2.75. Implied probability of 36%. For me, the reason why I'm thinking Jack is actually live as hell here is because of his physicality. I've always felt like Belal lacked physicality in grappling positions. It's why if you look at... Let's just bring up his stats. Because his stats do tell a bit of a story. So if we look at the takedown stats for Belal, what you will notice in a lot of Belal Muhammad's fights is that he shoots a lot of takedowns. Obviously not the Gilbert fight because it was a stand-up fight. But if we go to the Brady fight, also a stand-up fight. We're going to have to go back a bit further. Stephen Thompson fight. Okay. So, he shot 9 takedowns in 3 rounds. That's not good. Because that means he's having to shoot, on average, 1 takedown every 1.5 minutes. If you're a very good grappler with good grappling control, you don't need to shoot that many takedowns. The only reason why you need to shoot this many takedowns is if you're struggling to hold your opponents down. Let's look at some other grappling matches. Let's look at the Luque fight. So there he shot 10 takedowns in 5 rounds. An average of 2 per round. Damian Myers, not relevant. This was a stand-up fight that ended. Diego Lima, 10 takedowns in 3 rounds. Lyman Good, 8 takedowns in 3 rounds. And what you notice about these stats is the success percentages are quite low. So Only landed 25% of takedowns against Lyman Good. Only 10% of takedowns against Diego Lima. This was a stand-up fight. This would have been I don't think he would have taken Damian Maia down. I can't remember that fight. 21 takedown attempts from Damian. Fuck me. Might be a fucking record. Anyway. Stephen Thompson. I mean, Stephen Thompson's got very, very bad takedown defense, right? So his percentage is 77%. It's going to be higher. But then Luque, 50%. I think the sheer number of takedowns that Belal has to shoot shows he kind of lacks physicality. Because if you're really strong, you would just hit the takedown and then hold your opponent down, right? How many did he shoot against Leon? 13. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so what's really got me questioning this one is it possible that Belal's not as physically imposing in this fight as I thought he was? Is it a case of Leon just being very bad? He shoots this single leg here, right? Similar to how the Hafez fight starts. If we skip through, you can see Leon, similar to what we've seen Jack do, just gets to his knees and scrambles over to the cage. And then, like, a big measure for how strong, how physically imposing a fighter is obviously how they look in the clinch. And Belal in these positions in the clinch just doesn't really look that strong to me. And we know in these sequences where Belal's getting lit up and jabbed to death, Jack's going to be eating him alive on the feet. It opens up the lower body there with the double leg. Very nice. Into round 2. Into the double leg. He's got beautiful double leg entries. There's no doubt about that. But you see Leon gets that underhook on the right side. See how that underdog is starting to kind of shut Belal down? Drives through beautifully though. But again, can't establish that top position or get back control, and Leon just stands back up. High crotch, double leg, dumps Leon on his head. I mean, the replay of this is actually nasty. Look at this. Literally spikes Leon on his head. God damn. Pretty bad. Like, Belal is relentless, don't get me wrong. Like, he is very physically imposing. I'm just thinking, is Jack going to be too much for him? Like, what my question would be, right? Is Belal looking strong in these positions against Leon? Because Leon's actually just terrible. And the Sean Brady fight against Leon is what is making me question this. And is Jack just going to be too strong, too physically imposing, too tanky, and would smoke all these guys? Because none of them would be strong enough to take him down or hold him down. That's my question. Like you see in these positions, right? When you see how badly Leon got handled by Sean Brady, now watching him outmuscle Belal in these positions has got me thinking to myself, is Jack just going to be a demon for all these dudes? Because Belal just doesn't look strong in this clinch position. Like, is Belal going to be hitting takedowns and Jack's literally just going to be getting back up? That would be my question. You know what I'm saying? It's a tricky fight. Beautiful double leg entries. There you see Leon get that underhook on the right side. Yeah, so I don't know, man. I'm kind of just not sure about this one. I'm kind of just not sure, man. I have a feeling Jack gives Belal hell this weekend. But Belal's offensive wrestling is obviously very good. I don't know what to think. When I'm this conflicted and unsure, it's probably best to just not bet the fight, to be honest with you. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, this one is much more complicated than I thought it would be. And I don't know what to do. So, that's all the footage there, man. It's tricky. Very, very tricky. I guess you probably got to go dog or pass Jack, right? Let the odds do the work for you. Is Belal just going to be too much for him? I don't know. I've no idea, to be honest with you. You used to get rocked, wobbled, dropped a lot when he first came into the UFC. He's a lot better than he was, but he's still 37 years old. It probably wouldn't take much for Jack to knock him out. The odds on Jack by knockout or TKO are very steep, though. Maddalena by decision, 9.0 plus 800. That's kind of crazy, though. That's kind of crazy. So yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. It's a very complicated fight. I'm going to be thinking about this fight all week. I haven't made my mind up yet. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment if you watch on YouTube, or let me know on Discord. What do you think? It's a complex fight. We're now going to talk about the co-main event. Another title up for grabs. This time is Manon Fiorot against Valentina Shevchenko. And so, this was one of the first fights that I researched last week, because Manon Fiorot was one of the first names that jumped out at me as a potential bet. And when I researched this fight, I think her odds are about 1.80 minus 125. They've now declined to about 1.65, which is minus 154, for an implied probability of 61%, which is a big move. And this is why I'm researching fights a week early now, because if I would have researched this matchup and I would have liked to bet Manon Fiorot, that obviously would have been at much better odds than what we've got now. So where I've said I've been doing research on closing line value, things like that, beating the closing line, which is something I think I can be very good at. This is one of those spots that I wanted to get to, because I thought it would be a great bet at 1.80 minus 125. I was very disappointed by what I saw from Fiorot, to the point where I haven't bet her, and I'm definitely not going to be betting her. But this fight does give me something to ponder and think deeply about, because, like I said, I've been doing a lot of research using ChatGPT on how consistently beating the closing line, which is obviously placing a bet at a certain odds, and then by the time the fight takes place, the odds have got worse. That's beating the closing line, right? And how often you do that, and the margin, the percentage difference between how much you're beating the closing line by, is an indicator of how successful, how profitable you should be long term on pre-fight bets, irrespective of like short-term performance. So it's kind of like where you've got software in poker, and it will calculate what your true profit and loss should be based on your statistical chances of winning any given hand, irrespective of how that hand played out, right? You hear about poker pros going on huge multi-month, even multi-year losing streaks. This software can kind of show you how you should have performed, whether you should have been profitable or not. And while beating the closing line isn't as accurate, it's not the same thing. should give us some indicator over the long term of what our true level of success should be. And like I said, I beat the closing line on almost every pre-fight bet that I place when I place bets early. And so I'm not surprised to see Manon Fiorot's odds decline, because I was thinking of betting her, strongly considering it. And this is where I need to make a decision with myself whether, like, how significant is beating the closing line, right? Because I, straight away, out of all the names on this card, Fiorot was one of the first names that jumped out to me as a potential bet. So is my edge being able to drown out all the noise from the MMA community, cut through all the bullshit and see what is true, and pass on a fighter like Manon Fiorot, because once I've researched the fight, I can see that she doesn't have as good of a chance of winning as people think she does? Or do I cut the bullshit, like kill my own ego, and accept that consistently beating the closing line is going to be a pretty big deal? And so if I know a fighter like Manon Fiorot is probably going to see her odds get steamed, I should take that bet at 1.80 minus 125 last week, even if I don't think she's going to win, and just trust in the wisdom of the crowds, and trust in the fact that if you do consistently beat the closing line, especially if you beat the closing line by a lot, which I believe I can, that will lead to a very, very good degree of profitability. Should I just bet Manon Fiorot last week, irrespective of what the research shows me? Because as we've seen in recent weeks, the research, it's a lagging indicator. The research isn't going to tell us if Juliana Miller shows up and looks like a different human being compared to how she looked against Veronica Hardy. The research isn't going to show us if Michelle Pereira is going to wait until 8 or 9 minutes into the fight before throwing a punch. The research can't show us these things if these fighters haven't looked like that in the past. But perhaps the closing line or the line movement shows us insider information. Perhaps people privy to Valentina's camp or Fiorot's camp are placing big bets based on what they've seen, based on injuries, based on weight cutting issues. And so by being able to predict line movement is actually perhaps another way to profit from this sport, instead of straight up trying to predict the outcome of fights. I don't know. It's something I'm going to think very deeply about, and something that from this week I am starting to research. I'm actually building a page about it on the website, so it's not ready yet. It will be by the end of this week. So when it's ready, I'll post a link to it in the Discord, because I just want to track this closing line stuff, seeing how much we beat it by. I think we beat it by a lot, so I'd like to kind of measure that, turn it into something tangible, and see where it means for long-term profitability. We won't get the answer for another 2-3 years, because it'll take that long to build the sample size up, but Rome wasn't built in a day. We gotta start somewhere. We'll start now. So that brings me to this fight then. So why didn't I like Manon Fiorot as much as I thought I would? Well, the main reason why I didn't like her as much as I thought I would is because she's really just a point fighter. So she reminds me a lot of Holly Holm. So when Holly Holm first came into the UFC, she had a few highlight reel knockouts against a lower level of opponent. She had a few big knockouts in LFA before she came to the UFC. But then as she faced a higher level of opponent, she started to just kind of get into these really boring kickboxing matches where she would just kind of try to outpoint her opponents. And we're seeing the same sort of thing from Fiorot. If we look at her record, when she first came into the UFC against a low level of opponent, Tabitha Ritchie was very low level 4 years ago. She's not anymore. But back then she was low level, and she was just straight murdering bitches, brutal knockouts. But then as soon as she faced the step up in competition, she's turned into an absolute decisionator. And it's actually been a while since we saw Fiorot hurt anyone on the feet. And now what you see in Fiorot's fights for the most part is that she'll just stand in front of you and kind of chip away at you with jabs and range-finding kicks. Very similar to Holly Holm. A lot of her shots will fall short. And she's a little bit sloppy with it as well. Her footwork, her movement's not the best. Now, Fiorot does throw a high volume of strikes, but she just doesn't really hurt her opponent. She hasn't really got any power in her hands. She doesn't really land anything that impactful. And this is a contrarian view of what many people consider Fiorot to be, because I know there is a perception of her that she does hit hard and she is explosive and she is quite mean and nasty, but if you look at her last fights, I'm just not seeing it. The opposite is obviously true of Valentina. While you have Fiorot that brings a style of striking to the table which is death via 1,000 cuts, Valentina Shevchenko prefers to put a bullet in your head. She's an absolute sniper. Cannot match the volume of Fiorot, doesn't throw with the same volume as Fiorot, but she obviously has true legit knockout power. She's proven it against a decent level of opponent. I mean, I wouldn't call necessarily Jessica Eye a decent level of opponent, but Jessica's on the receiving end of a pretty evil, an evil head kick here for evil eye Jessica Eye. And we know Valentina's got that one-shot sniper style where she does land a lot of damage. Her shots are very impactful. So on the feet, you've got a real clash and contrast of styles. You've got kind of a sloppy, high-volume, death by 1,000 cuts Fiorot, where she just wants to pepper you and overwhelm you with volume, but isn't really going to do any damage. And then you've got the single shot of Shevchenko that's looking to counter you, send you to the Shadow Realm, but isn't going to throw anywhere near as much volume as Fiorot, but she is going to do a lot more damage. So on the feet, it's tricky, right? I can see why people like Fiorot here, because Shevchenko is a little bit passive. Doesn't throw a whole lot of volume. Fiorot does. And so you could see Fiorot kind of outworking her and outpointing her in every round. But Shevchenko is a technician. And is it going to be as easy to get to Shevchenko on the feet and pepper her with volume as it is these girls? I'm not so sure. I don't know. I wouldn't expect there to be any grappling in this fight. You know, Fiorot is difficult to take down and hold down. Shevchenko's not the best offensive wrestler. So I don't think Shevchenko's going to be able to have much success with her wrestling here. Fiorot could take Shevchenko down. Fiorot's a big, strong girl. We know Shevchenko's very weak off her back. But Fiorot never shoots takedowns, so I doubt that's going to happen. You never know. Maybe if she's in trouble on the feet, she might shoot a takedown. But she's a kickboxer. It would be outside of the realms of what she usually does. So yeah, I'm also struggling with this one. I mean, both girls are about the same age, about the same size. There's a 2-year age gap. You could say Shevchenko has a lot more miles on the clock for sure. But they're both about the same size. You know, same reach. Fiorot's an inch taller, a couple inches taller, a couple of years younger. These are small edges, small advantages. But yeah, I don't feel too strongly either way on this one. And I'm sorry, that's not what you want to hear. That's being boring. That's sitting on the fence. But when I study footage of these two girls, I'm just like, I don't really fucking know, to be honest with you. Volume versus power. I think this is quite likely going to be one of those fights where a lot of the rounds are kind of razor close and subjective how you score them. Someone wins a 49-48 decision, and we're all debating on X, how each round should be scored and who we think won the fight. I think this has got a split decision written all over it. So I'm interested to see what the fight spreads are going to be on this fight. Very interested to see what the fight spreads are going to be like. So hope you found that useful. Let's take a little look, I suppose, at the over-under. We don't have over-unders or props. There's no odds out yet. Apologies. That's the problem doing these breakdowns early in the week, but I think you probably like them earlier in the week anyway. So if I don't know what the odds are, but obviously very likely this fight will go deep, possibly to a decision. I don't know what the odds are, but I'd imagine they'd be pretty steep. I'd be surprised if either of these girls were to get a finish. Neither girl at this stage in their career is crazy dangerous. They're both still reasonably tough. Though Shevchenko did get wobbled a few times by Grasso. And then the only prop I would consider would be one of these two by decision. Probably Shevchenko by decision. But again, the odds pretty steep. We don't have prop odds, man. We'll refresh again. We don't have props, so we can't really cover props in this video. That's a shame. Let me know in Discord or the YouTube comments. Do you prefer breakdowns where I talk about the props as well as the fights, or early breakdowns? What would you prefer? Because it seems like I can't do both. Maybe we could even do a third video every week where we have a specific prop bet video. Let me know what you think, but obviously for now it's going to be impossible to talk about props. We don't have the odds. Anyway, into this next one, Alexa Grasso versus Natalia Silva. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Natalia Silva, pretty big favourite, average odds of about 1.44, which is minus 227 for an implied probability of 69%. If we take a look at the odds on Grasso, she's around an average of 2.80, which is going to be plus 180 for an implied probability of 36%. So Grasso is 31 years old, 5'5" with a 66-inch reach. Silva, 28 years old, 5'4" with a 65-inch reach. So both girls are about the same age, about the same size, and they're also primarily strikers. So Silva was one of the first names that jumped out at me as a potential bet on this card this week, predominantly because of how bad Alexa Grasso is on the ground. You know that if you put her on her back, she will just lie on her back, making very little attempt to get back up to her feet. And so if Silva were to just grapple a little bit, that's a clear and obvious path to victory for Silva. And in actual fact, if Silva does grapple this weekend, it'll probably be the easiest fight of her career because of how bad Grasso is on the ground. But if you go back and watch Silva's fights, it's very rare that she will look to try and take her opponents down, even under relentless pressure from Jessica Andrade, where you could see Silva was very uncomfortable in that fight. She still didn't really attempt to shoot a takedown to alleviate the pressure she was under, which would have been smart, but she didn't do it. And you know, not that smart, to be honest with you, because of how hard Andrade hits, and Andrade isn't that hard to take down and hold down. So if ever Silva were to use a bit of wrestling, you'd think he would be against someone like Andrade, because Grasso's not as dangerous as Andrade in terms of raw power on the feet. So if she didn't take Andrade down when she was very uncomfortable at times, I can't see her taking Grasso down either. So this is probably going to be a stand-up fight. I do favour Silva in this fight, there's no doubt about it. She's the more dynamic striker, she throws a more diverse range of strikes, but I just don't love the odds. I think her odds are too steep for me. It's a steep price to pay. Alexa Grasso is a pretty good boxer, decent pop in her shots, great cardio. Again, I think this has got the potential to just be a razor close stand-up fight where one of these girls just about edges it. And I would favour Silva, but it's not like I see any massive improvement, or no, it's not like I see any massive advantages for Silva in this fight. She's a little bit better than Grasso, but not to the tune of an implied probability of 65% or 69%, sorry, or 69%, yeah. Not interested personally. So yeah, Natalia Silva should win this. She's the better striker out of the two, but the odds are just a bit too steep for me, and we can't do the props because we don't have the odds. So now let's break down the next fight on this card, which is going to be Aiemann Zahabi versus Jose Aldo. So Aldo is currently the favourite at average odds of about 1.44, which is going to be minus 227 for an implied probability of 69%. And if we take a look at the odds on Zahabi, he's around an average of 2.85, which is going to be plus 185 for an implied probability of 35%. So Zahabi is 37 years old, 5'8" with a 68.5-inch reach. And Aldo, 38 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. So both guys are about the same age. Both guys are about the same size. Nothing too major going on there. And the only other factor which we have to talk about is that Aiemann Zahabi is Canadian. So he will have a home advantage on his side for this weekend. The crowd will likely be behind Zahabi, and perhaps that gives him the edge in the event of a close fight if this matchup goes to a decision. So at the moment, I do have a bet on Jose Aldo. However, I did research this fight quite some time ago at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning on a Friday night after I'd been working extremely long hours. And so when I researched this fight, I absolutely loved Jose Aldo, and I went out and bet him straight away. But since then, what I didn't realize at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning after like working for 20 hours straight is that this fight is taking place in Canada. Objectively, when I just looked at how both these guys matched up from a stylistic point of view, this is a terrible stylistic matchup for Zahabi, and I think Aldo wins very easily. But the fact that Zahabi has home advantage on his side does make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. As a general rule, I don't really bet against guys that have got home advantage unless the skill gap is huge and I can get amazing odds. And obviously when we look at the odds on Aldo, they are definitely not amazing. He carries an implied probability of 69%. So it's a tough one. Let's break this one down. So I wouldn't expect there to be any grappling in this fight. Neither Aldo nor Zahabi ever tried to take their opponents down. And Aldo has the best takedown offense in UFC history. He's unbelievable. Even at 38, almost 39, he's almost impossible to take down. So I very much doubt this one's going to the ground. It should be a stand-up fight. And if it stays standing, Aldo is levels and levels and levels and levels and levels and levels and levels above Zahabi. I didn't expect to be betting Aldo this weekend. But I didn't realise that Zahabi was 37 years old. You know? He's only had 14 fights. I thought he was a lot younger. I can't believe these guys are about the same size. So the reason why I really like Aldo in this fight is because Jonathan Martinez and Mario Bautista, I feel, are both significantly better than Zahabi. You know, Jonathan Martinez is certainly a better striker than Zahabi, and Aldo totally dominated Jonathan Martinez. For me, Zahabi is just a bit of a basic kickboxer. Doesn't have too much power, doesn't throw a particularly high volume, not a particularly dynamic striker. And I do feel you need to be a little bit special. You need to bring something a little bit special to the table in order to beat Aldo. Or you need to do what Mario Bautista or Merab did to him, which is stifle him with wrestling and disrupt him with wrestling and clinch work. But Zahabi doesn't really have that style. He's never fought like that. He's a technical striker. He's more like Jonathan Martinez, just not as good as Jonathan Martinez. So if we bring up a bit of footage on... where is he? Zahabi. We'll bring up his last fight against Pedro Munoz. And generally what you'll see from Zahabi is he will just kind of stand right in front of his opponent behind a high boxing guard. And that's all he'll really do. He'll just kind of stand there and have a kickboxing match with you. And I feel that that is like a really basic style that Aldo's going to deal very well with. Like if we look when they reset here. So you'll also notice he stands very heavy on the lead leg, which is a big issue when you're facing Aldo, because Aldo has some of the best leg kicks in the history of the UFC. And yeah, Zahabi just kind of stands in front of you like this, behind the high boxing guard, and just looks to exchange in kickboxing range. And I just feel this style is tailor-made for Aldo to just use his sniper style of striking to just blast you and pick you apart. I just think this is a fight between two strikers, and Aldo's just on a completely different level of striking. That's how I personally see it anyway. You see just how Zahabi's kind of basic on the feet. He steps in with a jab. Just kind of stands right in front of you. I could just imagine Aldo standing in front of him and absolutely lighting him up. Like if we take a look at Aldo in contrast. Let's bring up his Jonathan Martinez fight. We go to like here. About the same point in the fight. Striking's always more difficult to show you guys without showing like loads of footage, because it's more about just getting an overall sense of how they match up when it comes to striking. With like grappling, I can show you specific positions, but with striking, it takes a lot longer. Just going to round 2. Aldo just very good defensively, fast, technical. Gonna be here all day. Go do your own research. It's gonna take a long time to show you what I mean, but Aldo just a lot more technical than Zahabi. Moves a lot better than him. Just a different level, in my opinion. So yeah, man, this is a fight where, again, when you're betting fighters in this odds range, you should absolutely love them. And initially I loved Aldo very late at night or early in the morning, depending on your perspective. And then when I realised the fight was in Canada, I was like, I'm not so sure now. So I might end up hedging out of Aldo. I'm not sure. Let me know what you think. Again, I don't feel like we're getting a great deal in the odds, but let me know what you think. So now, let's break down the next fight on this card, which is going to be Bekzat Almakhan versus Daniel Santos. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Brad Katona is the underdog at average odds of 2.55, which is going to be plus 155 for an implied probability of 39%. If we take a look at the odds on Almakhan, he's around an average of 1.55, which is going to be minus 182 for an implied probability of 65%. So Katona is 33 years old, 5'6" with a 64.5-inch reach. Almakhan, 27 years old, 5'7" with a 68-inch reach. So we can see that Almakhan 6 years younger than Katona, and he also has about a 4-inch reach advantage over him as well, just under, and they're both the same height. This is nothing new to Katona. He does have a bad case of T-Rex arms, so he gives up a reach disadvantage to almost everyone that he fights. So he's used to dealing with this kind of reach differential. And so the only other X factor for us to consider on this one is that Katona is from Canada, which means he'll have home advantage on his side. He'll have the crowd behind him on Saturday night. Now, in terms of how these two match up stylistically, Almakhan is better than Katona from a technical point of view everywhere. He moves better on the feet, more technical striker, lands harder, more damaging, more impactful shots. He's a very good MMA grappler. You know, we saw Umar Nurmagomedov at times struggle to control Almakhan, which speaks volumes. And so, yeah, Almakhan, very, 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 very good everywhere. Better than Katona everywhere. Katona's strengths are his toughness, his high volume output, and in this instance, his home advantage. He will make you work very hard. He is tough, he is durable, not easy to get out of there. He is very well rounded, he is very relentless. But technically, Almakhan is a lot better everywhere. So this is a fight Almakhan should win outside of something crazy happening. Almakhan should win this fight very comfortably. He is very, 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 very good. My only issue with Almakhan is that at times he's a little bit passive. Doesn't always throw with the most volume. Holds back a bit. And obviously when you're facing a hometown guy like Katona, that can get you into a lot of trouble, because it gives the hometown fighter an opportunity to outwork you and steal like a dodgy decision. But yeah, I think that Almakhan should win this matchup very easily. And we don't have over-unders or props, so might have to do another video for those later in the week when they are available. For now though, that is going to be it. So I hope you found those breakdowns useful. Thank you very much for watching. If you hit the like button, that would help me out a lot. I would really appreciate it. and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my Discord, check out my website, all the links in the description below. If you want to make money on most UFC events, check out my live betting group. You will love it. We're just about to go on another huge winning run. Now is a very, very good time to jump on board. So have a great week. I hope you make a lot of money. I love you all. Take care. I'll see you soon. Nice one, guys. Bye.